Summer lake stratification, which is a direct effect of climate. A warm sun over a lake in the summer heats the surface, and if you swim in any of our lakes at this time of year, you dive down 6 or 8 feet, and what happens to the temperature? Does it increase? No. It goes down. And it goes down quickly. You know, when you go down 6 or 8 feet, it's warm, 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 and then all of a sudden, boom, you hit the thermocline. The lake is actually 2 water masses by midsummer. It's a cold water mass underlying a hot mass. And the difference in density keep them from mixing. So, so you get dead zones. In other words, oxygen can't move from the surface layer to the lower, colder water where things are decomposing. And things that live below the thermocline have less oxygen. So you get fish kills. Likewise, when there's less oxygen in those bottom sediments, metals get reduced and things like mercury get mobilized. So if you have mercury falling on the lakes from pollution sources, it gets remobilized during late August. This is just a graph showing that process, and I've already been going long enough, so I think we've explained it. But basically in the spring, the lake starts to stratify. It gets warmer and warmer on the top. The bottom stays roughly the same temperature. The longer the bottom stays isolated from the top, the less oxygen there is. So when the summer is warmer and longer, less oxygen below, more fish kills, and more heavy metals mobilized from the bottom surface. Of course, when fall comes, everything mixes and turns over, and everybody's happy because there's oxygen down at the bottom. Next. Fish kills, quick increase. This is just now. This is September. What do you think that is? What's that? Algae, right. So somebody said algae earlier. Nope. You did. So one of the things, of course, that water moves into the lakes is nutrients. And if we have more events, it's easier to move large amounts of nutrients. So climate change affects the open body water as well. Next. Recreation, of course, will be impacted. It's a multi-billion-dollar-a-year industry, especially around a region like Charlotte White. Anglers affected, bird watchers and hunters affected, sometimes for better, sometimes for worse. Communities dependent on recreation revenue are hit. And summer, of course, is expanding, but more extreme heat, heavy downpours, higher ozone, risk of infectious diseases that are more common in more southern, more warm areas. We've talked about groundwater recharge. With streams drying up in the summer, there will be less recharge in the summer and more flashy floods. Lake levels are expected to continue to decline. In fact, the climate models predict the Great Lake levels will decline from a minimum of 1 meter, or about 3.5 feet, to a maximum of 3 meters, or almost 10 feet by the end of the century. The Great Lakes are interesting because there's a lot of water relative to the land area. So if you have less ice cover in the winter, what process can evaporation continues through the winter. So you have more of these winter snow squalls, but you actually have more water leaving the lake in the winter. Also, ice, of course, is a reflective surface. When you have a dark water, you absorb more heat from the atmosphere. So, and there's people talk all the time about pressure to increase water extraction from the Great Lakes. As other parts of the country get drier, will we have opportunities to sell our water? Will we want to sell our water? And those are the questions we have to answer as communities, states. Well, we've talked about the flow absorbing capacity of wetlands. Next. Agriculture, there could be benefits. Water, warmer temperatures, longer growing seasons, CO2 fertilization, those things are real. They probably would fit different crops that we grow in this area. Certainly cherries might be harder to grow in a warmer climate, but corn might be easier to grow. There will be constraints, though. Summer times with less soil moisture would require irrigation. As you move northward, soils are thinner. You move out of the southern third of the state where you have nice silt, loams, organic rich soils, and you move up here where we have these wonderful sands that really are hard to grow crops on. If you move even further north into the UP, you have Precambrian shield granitic rock over very thin soil. So even a warmer climate up there might be somewhat problematic with many of our crops. Um,